Okay. Wow, that's a very serious looking thumbnail. Um, well, as I'm combating a monster of a headache, I don't usually get headaches. It's a bit of a surprise for me. Um, um, I've sort of found what I think will probably work. I don't know if I can get a source of acrylic in time for this, but I'm pretty sure I can use the birch wood and do some varnishing and poly, like an oil-based poly or a water-based poly. But I think an oil-based is better for what we want to do with it. Um, but when going through some of these puzzle patterns, I discovered a few that are they're like multiple small. Like in the case of one of them, there are three. What do they call it? Nonagons. You can do three nonagons that when you disassemble them into their individual pieces and reassemble them all together, you make one giant nonagon. And there are a couple like that that do that for stars. And a variant on some of those, like they come in. The thing that I like about it is like you could do a set of 5 star coasters. And when you take all the little pieces out of the main coaster, like the little board that the pieces click into to form the stars, when you take all of those out and you put them together, you can make one big star. And there are a couple patterns for doing that where you can do 3. It's sort of 4, but the fourth star is not a couple of pieces, it's just a star. I'm sure I could break that one up. So I could do 3, 4. I might not do 3. 3. I don't know that 3 makes sense, but 4, 5, and um, well, I could do a 6. Um, but yeah, so I could make uh, a variety of arrangements that the finished shape would be one big star. So you could do like a tray that all the pieces fit into, and then individual coasters that you can then take the pieces out of and try to sort them into make individual stars. Or in the case of the nonagons, one big nonagon and break it into 3 individual nonagons. There's a there's a 4 star, a 5 star, so a 3 nonagon, 4 star, 3 star. So yeah, I mean stars might just be the way to go. Honestly, there was a star pattern that had a giant star broken into its individual pieces makes 4 uh, decagons, which essentially would be the right shape to make a coaster out of. So that's a possibility. I don't know that I mean, I might do that. Like, it might be fun to do a white uh, star in a blue tray with small red coasters that the white stars click into. And so that could be a fun theme to do. Um, but cutting them out of acrylic might be hard to do. I'm not sure I can get the supplies in time. I think this is day 3. I might be able to get a supply of a couple of different colors by day 6. But in the meantime, I can make some out of wood, the birch ply, and varnish them. Um, the the possibility of doing a 4 set, a 5 set, a 6 set, maybe? I don't know, I haven't decided on a 6 set yet. So if I do like a 3 set, 2 3 sets together, then, I mean, I could make a 6 set that way. But, so that's a pretty straightforward, outline of what I could do with some of this. Um, in perusing through some of these other things, it gives me a lot of ideas for games and puzzles to make in different formats and customize the artwork for them. And a lot of this stuff is based off of some simple geometric mathematics, and so like doing a little research into some of those alternative ways of doing some of these breakups. Now, some of these, like the classic T-shaped puzzle becomes a square, and the what is it? The uh, oh, that headache is kind of painful. The T-shaped puzzle. Oh, and the tangrams and double tangrams making a single larger square. Those are those are something you could always do as a potential. Um, like especially if you do customized artwork for them. I did briefly entertain the notion of like full on from scrap because I know not everybody's going to have access to certain tools like a scroll saw or a laser cutter to do some of this stuff. But I I mean there's a simple way to do like a low tech version of a lot of these where you can make a preliminary piece, make simple molds out of them, and then um, make a paper clay that you can then varnish. I might do that. That's totally doable. Um, and there's no reason why I couldn't do that. Like paper based coasters don't strike me as overly reassuring in their ability to stand up to the abuse that they'll probably take, but I guess that depends on how well I varnish them, I guess. Um, and I will, you know, I think I could do some sales of them on eBay, maybe Etsy. I will see if I can touch base with the store in the local mall, see if I could sell them in person. Well, I mean, I wouldn't be there in person, but have a display of some of my creations for people to buy as they peruse stuff in the mall. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think I've solved that. I think I just need to build the prototype pieces or molds, and then uh, I might I might just see if in the next day or so if I can produce a simple paper clay uh, versions of some of these that I can make here, and then I need to touch base. I did reach out to some people to see if I can find a source of acrylic. Somebody asked me like, well, I've got a quarter inch clear acrylic sheet. How much do you want? And I'm like, "Wow, I don't know that I want clear, but I might take them up on it if I have to. It's not a source for it. It's just how to make one. And I was less. I mean, I did some looking around, and I think I could probably order some sheets on Amazon. um, they may not get here in time, which is the problem. But I think if I do manage to get it in time, or I could place an order for that, and whether or not it gets here in time for the end of the week, I can make some of the ones out of the birchwood ply and varnish them, and then I can update with additional versions of these by the end of the month. Maybe, possibly, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I have to build the pattern in a vector graphic system. Shouldn't be too hard. The wood ones, if I get them laser cut out of the birchwood ply, and then sand the edges, sand the surfaces, seal them, potentially stain them. Do I stain them or do I paint them? I think what I'll probably end up doing is sealing them and then look into painting and then sealing again. Because they're going to be exposed to water, and wood and water, you need to make the appropriate arrangements. Now, the other thing I'm playing with is, like, do I make all the pieces the same color? Because a lot of these are puzzles that are built so that, like, oh, you can see that if you put these two green pieces on either side of this red piece, it makes the piece work. And I think if they're all the same color, it makes it trickier and a little more fun. But it's also a lot harder to achieve the end result. Those two are the same. Those two are not the same. Those two, not the same. All right, so like I can see that definitely being something that's too frustrating for people to achieve. And like the thing I don't want to do is make these puzzles so that you dump them out to play with friends while having a drinking hangout at some point, and nobody can figure out how to get them together again, and so you just end up pouring them into a bucket or a drawer somewhere. That's not the goal. The goal is for you to have a fun time figuring them out with friends, or as a couple, or whatever you're doing that night. So if I make them all the same color, then you run the risk of making it too hard for people to figure out. Even if you put instructions down, your instructions can't be like, oh, this green piece goes here, but this blue piece goes over here. Like they're all the same color. It's just not happening. So in order to figure out how to do that, I may end up doing like the tray base, where like as I assemble the nonagons into the larger nonagon, when I cut those pieces out, I can cut all the way through the pieces that come out into the base underneath of it and etch essentially the pattern of where it's supposed to go into the surface, so that when it comes time to put it together, you can find the pieces that match and click them into place. And if I do the same roughly for the individual coaster stars, then I'm able to show people that if you take these pieces and you put them into the individual coasters, they make this star. And if you take them and put them into this one, they make this star. So, like, I do like the idea of doing the star ones, like, all white and a blue background. And then, like, the big star, maybe do a red and white stripe or something like that. I don't know. Those kinds of things tend to sell more, like heart-shaped things and star and stripe and red, white, and blue patriotic stuff. go well as sale items, which I'm I'm not usually a marketing guy, so I'm a little uncomfortable being that sort of like marketing about it. But I do like the idea of maybe being able to make a reproducible for sale series of puzzle coasters with themes. I could do like custom paint themes for them too. Actually, I'm trying to a few years ago, I did a project where I made some things for sale at one of my art tables. There we go. A few years ago, I made some projects for sale at one of my art tables at a convention, and I just got some hardware store poplar, I think it was. Now, I don't know that it comes in poplar ply sheets of the right thinness, but a pale wood essentially was what I was looking for. And I just used cheap watercolors to give them tinting, let them dry, and then polycoated them. That's totally doable. I mean, at that point, all I really have to do is make sure I can cut the pieces out the right shape. I do have a scroll saw out there, like right out there. It's not exactly in top working condition right now. I could probably get it up and running and do that. Got a bandsaw I know I can get access to, and I know I can go visit like the library or the makerspace and use a laser cutter because I've been checked out on them. I'm safe to use them, and I could cut out some of the patterns that way. And with a sheet of ply that would fit into there, I could tell it to cut an entire set of 4 top pieces and 4 bottom pieces. Glue the bottom pieces to the part of the top, have the top pieces cut out so that they're individual pieces. Let the glue set up, and then varnish, or tint and varnish each of them after that. That's doable. Um, I need to do it over the next couple days. I also kind of want to see if I can do it with scrap paper, make a paper clay, and then make a couple versions of something like this fully by hand at home. Man, what a headache. Um, yeah, so, and I like the fact that this is repeatable. Like I can do it in acrylic, I can do it in the birchwood ply, I can do it in a paper clay, I can seal them with poly or other forms of like. I betcha I could use a like a boiled linseed oil and a shellac for a finish. Now, some of those are softer or likely to wear off, and so like they would require more constant tending. I could do them in like rosewood and oaks and mahogany, and like I could do custom pieces. I could do brass inlay and do a custom piece, but I mean, at that point, you're talking about like different price points for each one. Like if I'm gonna do a brass wire inlay, you're easily talking about double or triple the price to do it. Trying to remember. I think I've got some bronze sheet metal somewhere I could make a set out of. I got maybe a 2 set, maybe a 3 set. Kind of don't want to lose that bronze sheet metal. It's not like there's a lot of it around that I can just get for the bargain that I got those for. Um, yeah, it's the versatility of what I can do them in and how I could do the custom artwork for each one. Like I could do a Celtic knotwork or a tribal pattern on the top of them. I kind of like, I think it would be adorable if somebody was looking for a "Will you marry me" puzzle, and I did it in such a way that you don't really notice it's happening until it's all together and it spells out "Will you marry me." There are ways to do that that would be amazing. I don't have anybody I need to do that for, but if somebody's out there looking for something like that, I think that would be kind of cool. And so being able to make a set like that that would do that, um, I think makes a good product. That means that it's not just a one-off sale. I can make again and again and again. Now, I had a conversation years ago with a friend of mine talking about how I had difficulty pricing and doing stuff like that, and part of it was just like I want people to be able to buy what I make, so I don't know how to price it like that. And he goes, like, how many do you want to make in a month? So I don't really want to make like one every day for a month. So I really don't want to make like a 30 in a month. And he goes, all right, so what, 20? I said, I would be happy with maybe 12 at most. He goes, all right, so price it so that what you get is the 12 most, the people who want it most. The 12 people who want it the most will pay the top price for the 12 that you want to make during the month. And I get that model of mindset. I still struggle with it a little bit because in my mind, part of the reason I like to do artwork is I can paint the painting and I can price that painting at $300 to $500. And the problem with a price like that is not everybody's going to be able to afford that. But I can get prints, like poster prints made of them for, what was it we looked at when we did the board game design? I think it was $9 to $15 for a poster. $15 for a poster of a piece of artwork that you would enjoy having. That's totally doable. And I can produce as many of those print posters as I want. Um, and make $1 a poster from that and keep it in a price range where people can afford it. So everybody who wants one can have one. I make money for creating it, um, and I can still have the original at a price point of $300 to $500 if I wanted to list it for that, which is a very reasonable price for an original artwork. If if you look at some of the other artworks that are out there, some people are selling them for several thousand, and that, like, I don't know how I would ever justify a price like that on anything I ever made. I might price a few things that I don't want to part with at that price range. That's because I want to keep them. Like, there is a price that'll eventually let me separate from that piece, and I will get my own print of that work to keep it as a memory of that piece. But there is a point at which I will say, no, I don't need it. um, but I can't do that for a product necessarily. A product isn't something you produce one of and then you get prints made. A product is a line of things that you can produce multiples of and sell. There is no worth more original necessarily. Like when I make these puzzles, these puzzle coasters, they're like the first coasters that I make aren't going to be $1,000 work, and you're buying a poster of the finished thing. Like they have to function, they have to do something. They're a thing that you handle and manipulate. and they have moving parts and interconnections and things like that. And that's something that needs to be um, designed. It's not as much art as it is design. So the design aspect of an item like this, I mean, there is an art to it. There is art, don't get me wrong. Especially if I do something like Celtic knotwork patterns on the tops of some of the tiles or whatever. Um, so there's an art to it, but this is something that's not meant to have an original and then reproductions of necessarily. This is meant to be something that's created for selling to multiple people on a regular basis. And so I have to go back to that mindset of that friend of mine who mentioned to me at one point. He says, like, you price it at a point where anybody who wants some, you only get enough buyers for the number you want to produce that month. And that makes sense. Still struggle with it a little bit, but like I don't know that there's enough demand for me to spend the time worrying about it. Honestly, I'll set the price at about uh, the birchwood ply because they're likely to involve a lot of hand polishing and varnishing. Um, I can set those at about 20. And the acrylic ones, I could probably set those at about 15 for a set of 3 or 4. Do a set of 6, do 20 on those, just like just varying them a little bit and uh, set them at a price range that makes sense and not produce them in huge quantities. Like, I don't want to store 15 sets of acrylic ones and 24 sets of birchwood ply ones and gradually sell them over time, which is something you have to consider when doing a product. Like, if you're going to do it on demand, then it's going to be a more of a premium on the price. If you're going to do a bunch of them, you're going to have to figure out where you're going to store them. Like, I could easily do 100 sets of each, and I would have to put out all the money for the raw materials. I would invest about a week of my time to put them all together, and I'd stock them in a closet for the next 6 months to 2 years until I've sold every single one. And inevitably, what you're going to get is you're going to produce something like 15 paper clay ones, 20 birchwood ply, and 30 acrylic ones. And you're going to have those stored in your closet. And at the end of 4 months, you'll be completely out of the birchwood ply ones, and people will be demanding more of those, but you'll have stock you can't move in the other two types. It's gonna happen. Like, you can do the time to do a like a preliminary market research. And I've worked in market research before, where you do the inquiry. You sit people down with the products and say, well, like, these are the price points, these are the products. Which one would you be most likely to buy? And you just build your statistics off of that, and realize that your statistics aren't going to be a perfect one-to-one match. Like, the people you ask, you're going to get a bias towards the people who are going to give you the time of day to answer that question. Whereas the people who actually buy, they would never have necessarily had the time to stop and answer your questions, but they want the product. They may want it in different ratios than the people who answer the questions. So you're going to get a little skew somewhere in there. Um, but it'll give you at least a rough estimate of where you need to be for that. And I could do that. I don't know that I'm that serious about doing a run on these. I think what I'll probably do is, depending on the materials I get, like if I can only get my birchwood ply in a sheet that's an 8 by 4 foot sheet of it, I'm going to cut that sheet into the two pieces, the bottom half and the top half, and then I'm going to cut all the little pieces out of that. And however many I get out of an 8 by 4, that's how many I'm going to make. that's that's just gotta it. And sort of the same goes for the acrylic sheets. If I get acrylic sheets through Amazon, uh, I'm going to like if I can get a deal on like uh, a couple different colors of acrylic sheet, I will make as many sets as those sheets will make, and then I will list them up. But if whatever I purchase only makes like 4 sets out of acrylic, then I'm only making 4. If the market is out there for 15 to 20 of them, that's great. I'm only making 4 for right now. If people want more in the future, I may remake them. Now, there is an aspect of that where people do limited runs on things. And I talked about this actually with some people down at VidCon this past year. And there was a panel on merch, people making merch versus how many t-shirts do you really need? Like, I subscribe to 15 to 20 different YouTube channels. I don't need 20 t-shirts, one from each of them. And I certainly don't need more than one from any of them. Now, there are some designs that are neat, but I don't wear 20 t-shirts in the course of a month. I think you've probably noticed my fashion sense is literally like I find 2 shirts or 3 shirt styles that I like, and then I buy it in 4 colors, and I get a set that's long sleeve and a set that's short sleeve, and that'll cover me all year long. So I don't need 20 t-shirts. I need roughly about 8 shirts total. And so I couldn't, if I wanted to, get one from each of the YouTubers out there. Now you could do things like hats and mugs. I don't really wear hats. I don't really use mugs. You could do one of those silly little water bottles that everybody carries around with them all the time, maybe. But like you're sort of hitting a wall at a certain point where like, what do you do for merch for people? And um, like when I originally started uh, planning to make YouTube channels, um, the 2 that I'm running right now, no, 2.5, 2 and yeah, about 2.5. Um, uh, were not what I originally set out to do. And one of the things I wanted to do was like a cooking channel. Now, if I do a cooking channel, a good idea for doing merch would be to do some cooking utensils. So, like a serving fork and a spoon for salad, um, bowls, aprons, dish towels, cutting boards. Here's the thing, finding a supplier for those is a little difficult, but when you do find it, they're usually expensive and they're hard to steer people towards. But I know I can order some bamboo kitchen utensils, and I know where I can get access to a laser cutter. So if I can find some good bamboo or other wood utensils and do some custom design elements on them laser etched, then that's a little bit better mechanism for doing that. Um, Another aspect that I talked with a person about was like I favor wearing vests when I have the time to tend to them well. I haven't lately because I've been a little too busy, and the weather's not been keen on it. But a good vest, I could print something on the back of a vest. Finding a company that'll do it? No. Uh, Finding a good source for a decent vest that's washable, that doesn't like that's the other thing I deal with is like finding a washable vest is not as easy. But finding vests that have to be dry cleaned and specially cared for, yeah, I can get those. But fewer people are going to buy those. But if I find a source for a washable vest that I can then print my own designs on the back of, I think that's a saleable item. Now, it's not going to be t-shirt popular, but that's okay. I don't need it to be. And in most cases, they'll be crafted by me. I will do the screen printing on the back of them. So it's not like I banged out a pattern and Inkscape, sent it off to some sweatshop in China, and they can make me 150,000 of them, and you can order one, and I make $1 profit off of one shirt. Like, no, this is something crafted by the person you ordered it from. It's a product, but it's more of a personal product and not a mass market product. Now, there are ways you can bring a thing to mass market. At this point, like if you're a YouTuber right now thinking about bringing something to mass market, you're probably going to want to partner with a company or sell your idea to a company. Because you, as an individual, even if you had a limited partnership and a manufacturing facility in your hometown that you could work with, the logistics behind getting that product off the ground and to customers, warehouse storage, ordering mass amounts of raw materials to work with, figuring out how to batch lots, just working all of that out is way too much for an individual or like a partnership corporation. That's really something you do when you're a major manufacturer of goods. And that's beyond what I'm going to do on this channel. I don't do that. No. Um, I mean, I have some products that I want to make that could potentially be saleable as a mass market product. I have no intention of taking it that far. For most of those kinds of designs that I came up with, my goal is to get a decent functioning working prototype, sell a few of them as handmade by me, maybe do limited runs of injection molded uh, copies. And then it really comes down to here are the designs. If you want to make them and sell them individually, please do. Because I want other people to have access to them. And if you can make them cheaper or faster than I can, by all means, do it. I want them to exist in large volumes all over the world because when I create something, it's because I want it to exist in the world, not because I want to get money out of your pocket. Um, and so if I want it to exist in the world, then like the nail, if somebody controlled the entirety of nail manufacturing and nobody else could produce it, how would we ever build houses? How would we ever do anything construction wise without nails and screws being something that people can make and sell? To a certain degree, our culture relies on being able to produce all sorts of things without having to fight for who's owning and who you have to pay for the right to make that thing. Like, I don't want to do that. But logistically, I don't wanna build like, one of the things I wanna do is I have a design for a pen I wanna make. I don't wanna build the better pen company. I don't wanna try to compete with Bic or whoever else is out there. It's just not something I care to do. Could I do it? Maybe. I could spend the next 27 years building from the ground up a manufacturing and distribution network for the better pen. But I'm going to be putting in 60-hour weeks for the next 20 years of my life to sell pens. I have other things I want to do with my life. Doesn't mean I don't want to make the pen. I can make a limited run. I can make custom made pens, handcrafted pens. Um, like there are artisans who craft chairs. I can go buy a chair from Walmart. But if you're buying an artisan crafted chair, you're buying the work of the artist. I would much rather do stuff like that and have other people take my designs and do mass market copies of them. I would love to be able to say, like, here, I'll sell this to you and I will be covered for life. You know, I'll sell this to you for 10% of whatever profits you make off of it. That'd be a really sweet deal. It'd be nice. It'd mean that I wouldn't have to worry about medical costs for the rest of my life, or repairs to my car, or rent. But I'm not going to hold out for that. It could cost me just as much time, money, and effort to make that deal happen as I could make time and effort into making other things that I want to see in the world. And more importantly, if I make them open and free, other people get the chance to make some small amount of living off of being a craftsperson creating some of these products themselves. And that's kind of the world I want to live in. That took a weird turn. I've wandered to the side weeds of this project when talking about that, but I think we're coming up on about 43 minutes there. Yeah. Um, I think that's probably good for this discussion tonight. I think I'll try to do a rough prototype tomorrow. I might use like some cardboard I got around here somewhere and make a rough version of one or two of these puzzle coaster sets. And then I'll see if I can figure out the pricing and how to acquire acrylic. I know I can go to like the big um, home development stores that I can get the birchwood ply, and I can make some paper clay here. So I can do hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours uh, an example of at least the cutout shapes in the final form, and then just refinish. I put a finish on the paper or the wood ones. So here's hoping. Here's hoping the headache goes away by then. All right. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you tomorrow.